Well, I'm glad we're back.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I missed last week.
that's okay. It's good to take a week off, and
Yeah,
but it's dang nice to get back together. I look forward to this every week. It's good accountability.
Yeah,
it's good to just get together and chat. Like I really do. I look forward to it every week.
Yeah, it's fun. My brother-in-law, he's like, you haven't put an episode out.
Oh, really?
Like, oh, hey, thanks, man. That's
cool.
So
that's way cool.
I've been playing cowboy. My parents have both had the Rona, and so I've been feeding cows and putting them back in. It's kind of fun.
Yeah,
it's another way to make money, but I don't know how to make money on cows. But
yeah, that's cool.
At least I get to eat them.
That's right. Well, and that's the best part of that is being self-reliant, right?
Yeah.
Growing your own stuff, especially now. That's so important.
Yeah. Well, beef prices are nuts.
Yeah.
But so are hay prices. So it's kind of that, that balance.
Well, and it's interesting too, kind of, and I grew up farming, and so like we've always, like I've always kind of experienced this, but it's interesting to see the price increases in the store versus like what the actual ranchers, farmers are getting.
Yeah.
Like the price has not gone up like it has retail for the ranchers and stuff like that. It actually was a pretty marginal year from what I understand for a lot of ranchers. But yeah, in the store, it's gone up, pretty substantially over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
And so it's like but I think if you step back and look at all the different processes that go from growing the cow to selling it in the grocery store, it's not like there's one person that's rolling it, like everybody's profit margins are probably similar to what they were. It's just we have inflated gas prices and, all of that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to hear that kind of stuff covered and stuff on the news because they're like, oh, well, farmers must be making a killing or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that there's a whole process to get from the field to the grocery store, and it's not always what it seems, but it is crazy. I mean, if you can grow your own beef or have a greenhouse or a garden and grow your own food, by all means, that's awesome.
Especially if it's kind of a self-perpetuating deal. If you have to buy the calf every year and then buy all the hay, then that's very different than if you were breeding the calves and they're on your land.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of it. Yeah. We have a friend who runs a lawn care business, and their fertilizer was double this year. They buy it all, they'll buy it now for the summer, and it was double what it was the year before, and all of that gets passed on. So it's going to be really interesting to see where prices of everything land here in the next year and a half, 2 years. But when inflation like this hits, it hits everybody. So technically, if everything's $1 now and the next year it's all $2, it's hit everyone the same. I just think some people have benefited at the top, but that's off in the weeds a little.
Well, and it's an interesting point. I actually saw, I think it was yesterday, there was I don't even know what the guy's name is. Like I think his podcast or YouTube channel is called like Valuetainment or something like that. I had to know his name because I watch some of his stuff from time to time when it pops up. Really good. I think he was like an insurance guy, and then, he's had multiple businesses and real estate and stuff, but he had, is it Danielle D. Martino Booth? She was like a former, worked at the Fed, one of the Fed banks. And then since then, like she's, always being interviewed by kind of conservative people, I guess, that are kind of concerned about the economy and inflation and these, our out of control spending as a government. And so she kind of wrote some books that kind of exposes some of those things with the Fed and whatnot. But anyway, so they were talking about, she had a chart that showed how the top 1% of Americans, which I think that's like earning over $500,000 a year maybe or something like that, owned like 80% of the stock market.
Wow.
And then, and then it kind of, there's different categories and stuff. It was interesting, like the middle class, maybe, I guess you could say, or whatever. Most of their net worth was in their home and they had very little stocks.
Okay.
And so it was just interesting to see the distribution of that. And they kind of had the point that like financial education, like, the top 1% is the top 1% for a reason. Now, there's probably some crony capitalism and some of that with some of those people, but they know financial habits. They're investing, they're buying things that go up over time, like you're saying with inflation. If everybody would have been bought in on the stock market or some rental real estate or something like that, their standard of living would be similar today than it was a year ago, or it could be in 2 years than it is today, because their net worth has increased with the rate of inflation. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting concept, and it's also I have to look at it with a certain positivity, because I used to have a certain dollar amount in my mind, like, if we could retire with 2 million, then we'd be good. Mm-hmm. Well, 2 million is not that much money anymore. Yeah. It might have been enough to retire 5 years ago, but it's just not anymore. And so when we're talking about this, it's almost like you have to just take everything that you were thinking before and double it or triple it, because add a zero.
Yeah, because really I don't know with how things are. What I do know is people who want to get ahead of the curve have to do something different than they're doing now.
Absolutely.
And that's really, why we get together, why we chat about this stuff, help other people with it, is because if we're not trying to get ahead of it now, we're just going to be caught behind.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think it's a perfect segue kind of into, what we're trying to do with this podcast is educate people on how to be self-reliant through business or investing or personal growth, where they can do, climb up the ladder in their job or whatever. It's mostly about fulfillment, but part of that fulfillment also is making yourself more valuable and that kind of stuff, so that you can keep up with that, And so I think that that's a huge, for me, looking at, because we both had jobs before and then have kind of transitioned and had businesses along the side, or, started multiple businesses, and then we've kind of transitioned away from that into full self-employment and entrepreneurship. I look at that now, and even though it's, there's pros and cons that come with each of it, but just when we're talking about inflation, wages, if you're an employee and you're taking home a paycheck, your wages do not keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to be in, is okay, now you're, they say 7% this year, but probably more than that.
Yeah.
Inflation. Okay. So your paycheck, if it didn't grow at 7% this last year, you've lost purchasing power.
Yeah.
And I would say the good thing about, and that even could go into retirement too, if you have a 401k or Social Security or a pension, those are fixed retirement plans too. Whereas I feel like entrepreneurship, knowing how to build a business, having investments like real estate or, things like that, stocks that pay a dividend or whatever, those things are going to rise with the rate of inflation. And so at least the standard of living can stay the same, or a lot of times exceed what the rate of inflation is. So it's kind of something to think about that way too.
Yeah. And in that regard, and not trying to be sensationalist, but really this could be the most important podcast that we've ever done, just because that is so simple, but it's going to be overlooked by almost everybody, because we have been taught that, we go to school, we get our degree, we get out, we get a job. And because of that level of education, we should then have a job that pays us enough that we're okay. In this climate and where we're at and where we're headed, it's really not going to be enough. And so knowing what we can do to get ahead of that curve it's kind of what we need to be focusing on right now. And we should always focus on the most important things in our life, but this very quickly is going to become very important to everybody. We have to. We got to get ahead of the curve. A lot of jobs that historically have been good paying jobs over the last 5-10 years just aren't.
Yeah.
It's never been known like, hey, you become a police officer and you have a massive amount of money, but it was always something that, if you were a police officer, you had enough.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a firefighter, you had enough. If you were an engineer, you had enough. Well, now it's to where
kind of a medium or even above medium level income, it seems like, you know?
Yep. You worked your shifts, or you worked your 40 hours a week, and you could have a nice house and decent vehicles, and enough to go on a vacation a year. And over the last little while, those people are getting second jobs and trying to find something else. And what used to be a very middle class career is not.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that we know have second jobs in those careers because they have to.
Mm-hmm.
And so knowing how they can maneuver, knowing how we can maneuver, what we can do, how we can get ahead of that curve, and really how we can cash flow our life a little bit more and stay ahead of that inflation curve, really by adding value to the world. That's the whole point.
Yeah. The fulfillment is you're always going to function better when you're feeling fulfilled and creating, and exactly like you said. I saw another, I think this was Mike Maloney that talked about this. So he's like a big gold and silver guy, but way smart. Something cool about him actually is he was dyslexic, and probably still is, I guess. But like growing up, reading and that kind of stuff was really hard for him. So he really, his best way to see information was on charts. And he really got to figure out charts really well because he could learn that, and then he could explain it to other people in charts. So that kind of led him to, some other things, but has led him to make some amazing things about money and the Fed. And I think it's called The Hidden Secrets of Money on YouTube.
Yeah, great series.
That's where I got a lot of my education on, kind of the intro to how that stuff works. But he was talking about this as far as inflation and that kind of stuff. I think he said it was like his dad or something in, I think like the mid 70s or maybe in the 60s or something, was a manager for, I think, an auto parts store. And, he said back then that was very middle class. They had a, even a kind of an above averaged home, lived in a nice neighborhood and all that stuff. And so he went back and looked at what the price of that house was versus his dad's wage.
Yeah.
And as a manager at an auto parts store, it was, I think the house was 3 times what the wage was. So within 3 years, the average, and he said it was very much a kind of median level average type income. But within 3 years, it was 3 years worth of wages for an average person to buy a house.
Yeah.
You look at it now, it's like, I think he said, and he took the averages, like the median home value, the median wage and stuff. It was over 10 years.
Yeah.
For an average type person to average type wages to buy an average house now. And so, he was showing the fact that, inflation in everything over the years has, the Fed prints money. That's what they do. And naturally, when there's more money printed, then things are going to go up.
Yeah.
So, but I think doing that, you just got to, that's fine. You just got to know where to position yourself.
Yeah.
What investments to do, what kind of career to have, what kind of, and that's the value of business and financial education, I feel like, is if you own a business, if you own a gas station and the price of gas goes up, doesn't really affect you because you're still getting the same margin, or similar margin.
For sure.
Whether gas is $1 or gas is $3, and then as your operating expenses go up, naturally you're going to charge your customers more. You have to stay in business.
Yeah.
And so it's something that kind of can keep you maintain your standard of living or improve it as inflation goes up over time.
Yeah.
But
the great part about the things that we're talking about is, and I sent you a video on it. It was really good. It was just earning money versus making money. I believe I sent you that. Yeah, because you wrote me back and you said it was great.
Yeah.
So I had a sick kid yesterday. Went and picked him up from school, and I was like, he's not going to stay home and just, play on Nintendo or whatever. He's going to entrepreneur for a day. So I was like, hey, buddy, you're just going to be with me today. I'm going to do a lot of driving. I'm going to do a lot of calling. We've got to go to a bunch of different places. And we were listening to different things as the day was going on. And we listened to that earning money versus making money. And he's like, this is awesome. I had no idea that I could just look for problems in the world and then come up with a business around it. And I was like, that's literally all it is. Look at the dent in that vehicle. How could we prevent that dent from ever happening? Look at that power pole. How could we keep that power pole from leaning over, or start a business to make that power pole be straight again? And the trash on the side of the road, how could we prevent that from happening? And he's like, I've got an idea for all three of those things. And they were all terrible ideas, but at least, his mind's starting to think, and he's like, oh, I can just pick a problem and I can go out and I can solve that in the world. And he's had this idea for a little business that he's wanted forever, but in his mind, he's like, I've got to make all this money to have the cool business that I want to own. I'm like, well, think of it a little bit different. How can you make money owning that cool business?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I get that now. And it's just that little bit of financial education that maybe we weren't taught. We definitely weren't taught in schools. That one day with a kid, it's kind of changing his whole thought on what it can be, and you can make money doing anything.
That's awesome. And making, because that was, even when you sent me that was even an aha for me too, because I thought about it, probably kind of thought about it all along this way, but just for whatever reason, it kind of hit me. Like you think about earning money, it's kind of a one-way thing.
Yeah.
But making money, like we think about, oh, well, all the rich people are stealing money. They're taking the money from, since that person has something, I can't have it. But if you're making money, you're taking something that didn't exist, improving it, you're actually creating value and wealth from stuff that wasn't there. It's not like you're taking it from anybody else. You know what I mean? Yeah. It creates more value, not only for yourself, but for other people as well. So it's kind of like to make it, like literally you make it out of something that wasn't there before.
Yeah. The only time that money is taken is through taxes. I mean, there's nobody around that's going, sticking a gun up to someone's head and saying, hey, go to Amazon and buy this. You don't have to. Mm-hmm. They do when it comes to taxes, but anything else, it's voluntarily given up. It just happens to be that those massive businesses have created a way that it's so easy for you to hop on a website and order something that you're gonna do that because it's very convenient, and then it in turn makes them multi-billionaires. We can do the same thing, just on a smaller scale. Or, I mean, more power to anyone who wants to go out and do it on a big scale.
They didn't take it from anybody. They created it out of nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And if people want to talk loopholes and this and that, then that's something that just needs to be taken up with legislature, and you have to change laws. If Amazon truly doesn't pay taxes, well, then maybe something needs to be changed. But you can't fault the people who are earning the money, as long as it's moral, legal, ethical, all of that. We can go out and do the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Is like, oh, well, they're not paying taxes. Okay, well, the tax law would apply to you too if you do those things, and you wouldn't have to pay taxes as well. Yeah. I had that made me think of this a quote there again from Andy Tanner. We were talking about him a little bit earlier. I've taken some courses from him on like investing and stuff like that. And I almost hesitate maybe to share this quote from him a little bit, but this hit me pretty hard one day on I think it was on a YouTube podcast or something that I was listening to him. And he's big on investing, entrepreneurship, having financial education, really good. He's been a really good mentor, and I've learned a lot from, studying his stuff and whatnot. And so this might sting to some people, I hope it doesn't. I hope that it just makes it, people maybe think about things a little bit differently. But he said, when you start to learn about investing and entrepreneur and business, you look at the world differently. You lose the greed of the job and gain the unselfishness of the investor. So I thought, when he said that, I put it in my notes because I was like, that's pretty good. I hadn't heard that before. But, and I think what he's saying there is, in a job a lot of times, and this isn't the case for everybody, but it's like, how much can I get by spending the least amount of time here?
Yeah.
I did the same thing when I was in jobs, that's kind of, that's just kind of the mindset. When you get to be an investor or in business or whatever, it kind of goes to how much value can I create and still make a profit? You know what I mean? It almost switches from a money incentive to a value creation incentive. So, I thought that was an interesting quote and kind of along the lines of what we were thinking about, but
I like that a lot.
Don't kill the messenger on that one though. No. It is kind of an interesting viewpoint.
Well, it makes sense. You've probably walked in, you're like, hey, into a store. Hey, how's it going today? Oh, it's great. It's been really slow. I'm like, oh, I feel bad for the business owner here.
Yeah.
It's been great because it's slow. Or the other times you go in, hey, how's it going? Oh, today's awesome. There's been so many people come in today. Just a very different mindset in employees there. One's thinking, hey, it's been slow, so I can hop on TikTok and go through things, and I'm still making $15 an hour, whether there's customers or not. Whereas that other employee is like, I know that I got to earn my keep here. And if it's not busy, I'm cleaning or I'm coming up with a way to get more customers in here or whatever it is. There is that different mindset.
Yeah. And I mean, there again, like we've said so many times, we're not bagging on a job or specific person or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just a mindset thing. If you're totally fulfilled where you're at and what you're doing, great.
Yeah.
Like stay there and keep doing what you're doing. If you're looking for something different, you don't feel fulfilled, or you want, more, or you want to create something or whatever, then that's kind of what we're talking about as far as our, just the switch in mindset, that kind of stuff.
For sure. And there are so many different ways that fulfillment can come about, and that you can use that to earn extra money in your life, to get ahead of that inflation curve or whatever it is, get out of debt, save for retirement, go on those vacations, buy that car, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
So many different ways.
So we were talking a little bit about how, and we've talked about this quite a bit. We'll send stuff back and forth to each other. And I notice it now more when I see a cool idea or something. I'm like, oh, like if that guy can make money doing that, anybody can make money doing anything.
Yeah.
So a couple that stood out to me this last week were, it was on just like Reels, on Facebook or YouTube or whatever. And it was this guy. So envision you're like at Cold Stone getting ice cream, and he must have like a body cam or something to where it's just looking down at the ice cream as he's like scooping it up and mixing it or whatever. And I'm like, that's kind of random, whatever. Well, I click on it and I get going through this stuff. It's this guy that's made he's like early 20s, I think, or something. And it's him part of it's at Cold Stone, part of it's at other places, but he's like talking while he's mixing ice cream, and it doesn't even hardly show his face or anything. It's just him mixing ice cream. Well, come to find out, he's got like 3 million subscribers on YouTube. I think he had more than that on TikTok. And then like I saw some of his, like at the beginning of the year, he would do a video of himself and talk about like, hey, this is kind of the review from last year, and this is your goals for the year going forward. So it was just a reminder for him to look back and see how much progress he'd made. His goal was to have an ice cream shop in New York City, his own. And so through those videos and stuff, he actually, and I don't know exactly how, I haven't looked through it all, but he actually raised $1.5 million to start an ice cream store in New York City. And that's what he's doing. Plus he's running YouTube as a business, probably TikTok is a business. Like the dude's mixing ice cream in Cold Stone.
It's awesome.
Like, how cool is that?
Yep.
So that one I was just like, dang, like if anybody tells me that they can't start a business, check this guy out.
Yeah. There's that. There's I think we've talked about him a little bit before, a couple episodes ago, but Daniel Mack on TikTok.
Yeah.
This kid just loved cars. So, and I think he lives in LA or something. So there's really nice cars all over the place. When someone would pull up, he'd run up to him with his phone. Hey man, I love your car. What do you do for a living?
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the beginning, it was just cool TikTok videos. Now he's collaborating with NASCAR drivers and multimillionaires, a billionaire here, and he's made it. He can now go buy that nice car if he wants.
Yeah.
But he just continues to make videos. And instead of him being like, hey, what do you do for a living? They're like, hey, you're that guy from TikTok.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden he's the celebrity.
Yeah.
And, not that we're doing this to get celebrity status, but, he started a TikTok because he liked cars and now he's making millions.
It's a business. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's not there's so many opportunities. Like there's another one I saw was YouTube videos. So, like, how random stuff just pops up, and usually I don't click on it, but this one was like a hoof, like a cow hoof, or like horses. I probably started watching the horse ones first, and it was a guy that was shoeing horses. And I'm like, oh, that's, kind of cool, whatever. Late one night, I clicked on it just for whatever, or maybe it was a reel as I was going through. So it's like you're watching, it's just the hoof on there, and they're trimming the hoof and, putting the shoes on and everything. Actually pretty cool. And I'm like, man, that's incredible that these guys can do this. So I get, watching them, and then more stuff gets put on my feed and whatever. There's a couple of them that are guys that go into like dairy farms and trim cow hooves. And I think one's called Nate the Hoof Guy, and one's called, what else? Like I don't know, something. But I'm like, I would never think that I would be watching this stuff, but it's pretty fascinating. Like they're talking about how there's sores in there and how they fix them and all this stuff. And I grew up on a farm, but I had no idea that they did any of this kind of stuff. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, but these guys have like 2 million subscribers.
Yeah.
And so I get looking in the comments, and like every person is like, I have no idea about farming, but for some reason, watching these videos is just so like soothing or meditative or neat to learn about and all this stuff, And so I'm like, even people that are, take that for example. Oh, I'm just a guy that trims cows' feet. Yeah. Like there's nothing I can do for a business. Yeah. We kind of take for granted the things that we do, but there's people out there that actually want to learn about how to trim cows' feet, or, watch that, or how to, be a firefighter, or a day in the life of a cop, or, whatever it is. Like there's farmer videos, there's just everything, and it's interesting.
Does it get any more niche than cleaning hooves and making a living outside of cleaning hooves?
Yeah. He probably makes way more on YouTube than he does on the actual business itself.
Yeah. Same with, kid flipping ice cream.
Oh, yeah.
There's very talented people out there, and you see them and you're like, dang, you're talented. But there's also the law of influence. So trying to remember which book. I'm sure several books talk about it, but there was one in my mind. But the law of influence. Essentially, your level of income is going to be proportional to the level of influence that you have. If you're able to influence one person, it's going to be a lot harder to make that $1 million than if you're influencing 1 million people. It's just, 1 million people giving you $1 is probably a lot easier than one person giving you $1 million.
Yeah.
Well, you can only trim so many hooves in a day. You can only serve so many farmers, so many cows. But online, the sky's the limit at this point.
Yeah.
There's that. There's I think she is the Texas bee lady on TikTok.
Okay.
Never did I think that I was going to watch a TikTok video on someone who rescues bees.
Okay.
It's so fascinating. Someone will give her a call. They're like, hey, I've got a bunch of bees in my garbage can. And she goes and she explains everything that's going on. Well, there was this queen bee and she died. And so the bees didn't know where to go. So they started to just kind of flock here, and they do this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the dead queen's body and I'm going to put it in this hive. And all of a sudden, I scoop these bees, and then watch within 10 minutes, all the bees are in this temporary hive, and I'm going to go and bring them to this other one, and I'm going to integrate them in. I'm there 30 minutes into watching TikTok videos on bees. And I'm like, well, what has happened with my life? But
yeah,
it's amazing. She can only influence so many bees, or she can only influence so many people. You put that on TikTok, and all of a sudden she's running a YouTube channel, and she's Save the Bees shirts, and she's made a whole living out of it. Whoever would have thought?
Well, and how much value, like even even though you're not going to school to be a bee rescuer, like it still adds value to you, because you're like, this is like, learning is so, like, now you have an understanding of how people can help bees besides just going out and spraying the thing with bee killer or whatever. With the hoof thing, like, that's crazy. I never, like the education value of it too just is pretty wild as well. Well, and then you start to put a lot of things together. So I've heard for years that the bee population is dying. And she talks about it too. And then you're like, well, now there's an actual expert that I'm hearing about the bees dying, and we can help. Like if we see bees that are out of place, we can call someone that knows what they're doing, and we can help this whole population. This lady's probably single-handedly saving bees on the planet because of TikTok. Yeah. It's really cool. Well, and you probably never even had thought of the idea of having somebody that would save bees either. Yeah. Like before, like I didn't know that until you just told me about it. And so now next time I go to get rid of a beehive, I'm probably going to think differently about that. And like, oh, well, maybe somebody could come and get these. And, I don't know. It's cool. Well, it's fascinating. It is. And even just learning that stuff. And I could go on like for 30 minutes because of her TikTok videos, what I know about bees now. You could apply that all to business. You got the queen and then the little worker bees, and I don't know. It's fun stuff. Well, and I think anybody, like, so there's a perfect example that anybody could do that. Yeah. Like whatever it is, like garbage man. Like it would be fascinating to see. There probably is. Yeah. There probably is a YouTube channel of what a day in the life is of a garbage man or whatever. And it would do well, if you're interesting and you make it interesting and you go through the process and stuff, it's going to help people appreciate your job more, to see what you're actually doing every day. You're going to educate people on, hey, it's nice to spray out your garbage can and, because of this, this, and this. Oh, okay. I'm going to spray out my garbage can from now on. Yeah. I think that we really underestimate the value of some of these things. And on top of that, you can run it as a business and make money out of it. Anything. I mean, I'm like, okay, what job is out there that you couldn't do that off of, that somebody wouldn't be interested in? I don't know if there's anything. And what job doesn't really have value? Because that's the other thing. Growing up, maybe you just heard someone and they're like, all you're ever going to be is a garbage man. Well, then you learn about these garbage man's jobs and you're like, that's pretty cool to be a garbage man. That's an integral part of living in a civilized society, is having a really good garbage man. Yeah. And the processes that go into that. And I mean, really, so many parts of society that we take for granted are so important. Yeah. Yeah. So and interesting. Yeah. Like when we were working at the fire department, we went over and toured the water treatment place. Yeah. And I was like, I had no idea that it was so, like, there's a science behind it, and it's so much passion. The guy's like, oh, there's this pump and it's this many gallons per minute and this is the wattage and this is that. And I'm like, he knew his stuff. It moves water. Cool. Yeah. But if it weren't for that guy knowing all those things, everyone in the city doesn't get water. Yeah. Until someone else is trained up to that position or whatever it is. Yeah. It's crazy. Or, the video of the guy that goes to thrift stores and finds gold belts. That one was awesome. So there's this guy that goes to a thrift store, finds a belt, buys it for 99 cents, knows what he buys, takes the buckle off of the leather, hands the buckle to the lady in the gold and silver coin shop. She knows what it is. She weighs it, hands him $300. There's like, people can do this. They can do anything they want. I saw, that reminded me, there was a guy that started flipping couches. Like that was his, I think it was in college or something. Like he went and I think there was like an ad on Facebook or something for a free couch. So he just went and picked it up, cleaned it up a little bit, and then sold it for $100 or something. And he's like, what if I could do like 5 of those a day, or 3 of those, or whatever, and 10 of those in a weekend? Or so he started doing that and made made a lot of money. Now he does, I think, real estate stuff or something maybe.
Yeah.
But just getting a little bit creative and seeing and an idea, and it could be an idea somebody else is doing too,
For sure.
And it wouldn't even have to, now that we're talking about people doing these jobs and then making a YouTube channel out of it or whatever, I think a lot of people think, oh, well, in order to start a business or in order to do something like that, I'm going to have to quit my job, and, it'll be a lot of stress and which some people, that's what you got to do, is you just have to switch directions altogether. But most people probably not. You start like the cash calf philosophy. You start a side hustle. You start a YouTube channel that's about you being a plumber, or whatever, and you start on the side there, and then maybe it leads to you transitioning to buy your own plumbing company or whatever. I mean, there's not only multiple ways and opportunities to do it and make content and make a business, but you can do it with whatever amount of time you have to do it too, probably. I mean, there's so many options.
There are. One thing that I've always tried to do that I think has helped us a lot is just monetizing passion. So, if I'm passionate about, let's just say, shooting guns, well, it can get expensive. Ammo's expensive, guns are expensive. Well, how do you monetize that passion? Well, we own a fitness gym, and I like to compete in tactical fitness competitions. So how do we monetize that? We start training people to shoot tactical competitions, and then that leads to getting a sponsor from local gun shop, and they provide some ammo, and they provide this and that. And, is that a side hustle that's going to make for an early retirement? No, but it makes for a lot cheaper shooting. So that's something too. Someone's passionate about plumbing, and they're like, well, I plumb my normal day job, but I really like it, and I'm not making quite enough money doing that. Well, a YouTube channel, a TikTok, an Instagram, whatever. Just monetizing your passion can be a really good start.
Yeah. Well, and if you're passionate about those things, you probably enjoy teaching people about it. YouTube, TikTok, Facebook is the perfect. I mean, when I need to get something done, like, like plumbing or whatever, I go to YouTube. And so I think that I love what you're saying, is that passion part just has so many different directions that you can go with it. I mean,
so many.
It's cool.
It is cool. There are so many people that have started things, and it catches on so quick that it actually grows a little quicker than they're wanting it to. There's that story of, I don't know if I don't remember the name, but like a skirt company out of Utah, and they just started selling skirts. They'd buy them really cheap out of China or something, and then they'd sell it, and it got to be millions and millions of customers and people, and they just couldn't even grow with how fast they were going. All she wanted to do was sell skirts. She just enjoyed skirts. It's just so weird. Like, you can go buy skirts anywhere you want, but it happened to be that everyone wanted to buy skirts from her.
It
could be anything.
Yeah, it really can. It's cool to see what people come up with. I actually enjoy going on social media and scrolling through some of that stuff, because I'm always just blown away. How did, number one, I never knew anything about that. Number two, like, how did they come up with that idea? Like, that's so cool. But it wouldn't even have to be, it doesn't even have to be an original idea either. Like the hoof trimmer guy that I was talking about, there's a bunch of different channels of different people doing that, and they all have millions of, not all of them, but quite a few of them have millions of subscribers. So you don't even have to be extremely creative. I mean, see what other people have done and just copy it.
I think a good example of that is the pop shops. Pop, not pot.
Well, both,
the soda,
probably.
Probably. The soda shops. I always get, maybe I'm just a creature of habit, and I probably shouldn't drink as much as I do, but Diet Mountain Dew with sugar-free peach and mango. I get it everywhere, but all of them taste slightly different. I don't really know why. It's all the same stuff. But I went to one the other day, a new one, and they put a little peach ring on the top of the straw. Just slid it down over the straw. I got a peach ring.
You're going there
I'm
every
going
time
back.
now.
Something so small that it costs the same, but they slid a peach ring onto it.
Yeah.
It's little, it's tiny, but I'm like, that's detail. It's the same pop. It's the same soda. It's the same flavoring. They just
Adding a little more value.
adding a little tiny bit more value. And I go back. Something else that just popped into my head too is using life difficulties to spread awareness and in turn get your influence out there. There's this girl on TikTok. I've obviously spent too much time on TikTok lately. She has Tourette's syndrome, but not the swearing Tourette's. Hers is like they get tics. It's like maybe their eye twitches or whatever. But hers is pretty advanced, and she'll actually pick things up, sadly, from TikTok, and that becomes her tick. And so, if there's one where they yell, "Light it up." Well, she'll be in a normal conversation, and then all of a sudden, she'll stop and she'll be, "Light it up, light it up," and that's her tick. And so she started to spread awareness about Tourette's, and I had no idea, like the things in life that can, stresses that can start to cause tics that can turn into more, and the difference between like verbal Tourette's and I guess physical Tourette's, like your body actually moving and everything. Well, she's taken this from TikTok to YouTube to, I guess, talk shows and, just spreading this awareness, something she has to be passionate about because it's now part of her life and it's difficult.
Yeah.
And she's making the best of it and she's monetizing it. It's really cool.
And spreading awareness and educating people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much opportunity right now. I mean, sky's the limit. If anybody wants to start a business, and even and I think too that some of the old cliches are like, oh well, I don't have 20 years of experience. Good. Being the new person coming into, say, a niche, whatever it is, you're probably going to have a different viewpoint. Everybody's going to have a different viewpoint, on a certain subject or whatever. Different people are going to have just, we're all different. We're all individuals. And so we're going to create stuff differently. We're going to explain stuff differently, and there's just, whether it's a new idea, whether it's an old idea, no matter what it is, there's just move forward with it. It's something you're passionate about,
I think it's easy to get caught in that, as far as, well, I don't have enough experience or I don't want it to be too different. There's that app that just came out. I think it's out of Utah as well. Maybe I just see all these Utah things because we live in Idaho, but it's a real estate app. And it's essentially like your realtor in an app. Very different than the conventional way of doing things. But it's like kind of taken the world by storm. It's becoming huge. It's got all your documents, everything that realtors do, but it's just condensed into an app. And so now you can start to take out some middlemen. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it's different. Now some of those fees aren't paid. So the homeowner gets to keep more money. The seller gets to keep more money. It's just different.
Yeah.
And it's not done how it's always been done. And, maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but it seems to be adding value to people.
Yeah.
And the people who created the app are becoming wealthy because of it, because they're adding that value to the world.
Well, and like it or not, I mean, we have, with the technology and everything we have, there's more instances where middlemen are getting cut out.
Yeah.
And like it or not, the closer you can get the end consumer to the producer, the more money there is for, you know what I mean?
For sure.
It's more efficient anyway. There's going to be more money for the producer, and it's going to be at a lower cost than the consumer anyway.
Yeah.
And so I think that's just efficiency. And so I think that's what technology is supposed to do, is make our standard of living more efficient and cheaper is what it should do. I mean, right now we're seeing all this inflation stuff, but back to like the farming thing. I know of a person that has a dairy here locally that kind of has a specialized kind of milk. It's actually really good. It's all that we drink with my family, but they are kind of more of like a direct to, they bottle it themselves and everything, and then they sell it directly themselves, or they sell it to a grocery store, And
I think we drink the same
if you
milk.
buy it in the grocery store, it's like $6 a gallon.
Yeah.
If you buy it directly from them, it's $4.
Yeah.
And so, that kind of shows you, if I'm buying directly from them, sure, it's cutting out the grocery store, but I'm getting the product at a lower cost, and their margin is probably better on that too, getting it straight from them. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah. So it's just, it's interesting to think about that too. And yes, there's going to be some jobs and industries that are going to be maybe going away, but that's how things progress anyway, and efficiency.
They always find their place. So I had read something about butcher shops. There used to be a butcher on every corner. There had to be, because you had to quickly get that meat to the consumer. Well, then the refrigerator comes around, and we don't really think about this or talk about it anymore because it happened and whatever. There was a big pushback from the butchering industry.
Oh, sure.
Because they're like, we're all about to lose our jobs because of this thing called the refrigerator. And they did. There's not a butcher shop on every corner now because you can refrigerate and freeze meat.
Mm-hmm.
But it all found its way into society and, did what they needed to do, and everything went just fine. By us changing the world for the better, there's going to be change, but we shouldn't be afraid of that change.
Mm-hmm.
If we're making things cheaper and more efficient and better, then there's going to have to be some changes here and there, but it's just how it is. I know there's a lot of pushback and maybe some scared people right now about all of these fast food companies that are automating. It's maybe not a bad thing though.
Yeah.
Everyone's talking, well, what about minimum wage this and minimum wage that? Well, if minimum wage can get pushed out by a machine, maybe it's better that the machine does it, and we take those people that are smart enough that they need to be making $20, $25 an hour, and we put them into something that is worth $20, $25 an hour.
Yeah.
That might be a really kind of mean thing. It might come across as mean, but it's not. I really think that people have their place in society in a good and positive way if we allow for that to happen.
Sure. Well, and if you're motivated, it comes back to personal awareness maybe, or motivation. You know what I mean? I mean, say your industry is changing. If you're the best and the most creative and you're involved, then you're going to evolve and change along with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what, and people that don't are going to move into other things, just like you're saying. It's interesting because we think that change, people are always up in arms about, oh, well, if that changes, then all this stuff's going to happen. We think it happens with the flip of a switch, but it's pretty slow, really.
Yeah.
And so people have time, and industries have time to kind of move and shuffle and improve as they need to. But I mean, change is good. Change is always a good, positive thing. Makes us look at things differently, makes us just, look at different opportunities instead of just getting stuck in the same way of doing something, like the realtor app. Maybe a realtor, obviously a realtor probably created that, maybe, and so they're looking at things a different way and stuff, but there's probably a way that realtors can use that to their benefit, or use something to play off of that or whatever, So,
and because change is inevitable, why not be the one that is initiating that change in the direction that you want it to go?
Yeah.
It's really easy to be set into a way of life or into a job and go, I hate when things change, because it's changing for us. When really we can take control of your life, you can take control of your circumstances, and you can move life where you want it to go. It might not be exactly where you want it to go, but it's kind of like those Chevy vehicles right now that you put the destination in and it's going to get you there, but it's kind of all over the road. It's like hitting the left lane and then it's beeping at you and it's moving to to the right and it's
hitting the
beeping at you.
guardrail. And
Well, you can just take a hold of that wheel. Either way, you're going to get to the destination. It's going to be a little more smoother if you take control of the wheel and get there.
Yeah.
And we can do that. We can all take control of our lives. We're all in control of our destinies. That's not it's not a where you came from thing. It's not a race, a gender. It's nothing. It has nothing to do with any of that. You take control. You set goals. You affirm what you need to in your mind so that you start to believe it, and you move in that direction. And that's for anybody.
Yeah. And anything.
And anything, yeah.
Yeah.
Literally anything. It's nuts what kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff people make a living or get massively wealthy off of.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
Farts in a jar.
Yeah.
Which adds no value to anybody, by the way. That's the only business.
I think I actually read another article that she quit doing it. I don't know why I'm reading so many articles about that, but honestly, it like keeps popping up on a couple of news sites that I have. But okay, so not to have to talk about the fart in the jar girl, but I think
it's fascinating.
I think that's, to kind of prove a point, you go to the extremes, and I would say that's like the extreme. Like, look, this person's doing this. You can do anything you want to.
Yep.
But she, so this was it. So she had some medical problems or something because she was trying to up her production.
Oh no.
Yeah. So she decided, like, she went into a doctor or something. Supposedly the doctor was like, you need to quit doing this because you're gonna, like, this just isn't healthy to be eating all this junk. Anyway, so she created an NFT that is different, these different like jars. Dude, I'm not, like, seriously, if somebody can come up with this stuff, like this person, anybody can do. We will get to Mars.
Why does poverty even exist in this world?
Right. And so she does. She has this community and sells NFTs that are icons of jars with like different faces and hats and stuff on them, and it's even called, I think it's called Fart Jars, is the community or whatever.
Those are going to be hanging in the metaverse for the rest of history.
In like the Smithsonian in the metaverse, whatever it is. Like, there's like, what's that artist guy that sold his art for huge amounts of NFT for huge amounts of money?
Beeple.
Yeah, Beeple. So there's like Beeple, and then next to it there's like fart jars, in
coming soon, Cash Cab burps in a bag.
Yeah,
we're gonna start burping. We're gonna go get diet caffeine free Mountain Dew with sugar free peach and mango with a peach ring on the top, and we're gonna start burping in bags. It's crazy.
No, like, seriously, like what a cool time.
Yeah.
To be,
Yep.
Whatever you want to do, just go do it.
No, I totally agree. It is really cool. It's easy to get caught up on the nuances and the what do we need to do next, but really step forward. Open that jar.
Yeah.
Close it quickly. I mean, really, it's just it's anything, truly anything that people want to do.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Just do it. Just make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any book recommendations or anything you recommend people to go out and watch?
I've been struggling this year a little bit to kind of, we talked about last year, I had like 2 or 3 books that I just studied,
Yeah.
And so this year I'm like, okay, I want to change it up a little bit. So I've been struggling to find, I'd take any suggestions, but I've been struggling to find it a little bit. I have one of those books that I studied a lot last year was called Soundtracks.
Yeah, you sent me that. I listened to it.
Really interesting. I like it just because, a lot of the stuff he talks in there about how we tell ourselves things, even though a lot of times they're not true or whatever. Yeah. And we can change what we tell ourselves, so if we think that we are a terrible business person or whatever, then, he kind of talks about dissecting that and going back and saying, well, is that really true?
Yeah.
Well, no, I guess it's not really true. Is it? You're being kind to yourself? No, I'm not really being kind to to myself. Is it helpful? Like, is that helping you? And, you can kind of get down to the root of the thoughts and mindset you have of asking those questions. And then if it's not being helpful, then change it to something else, even though it might in the beginning seem dumb, whatever. And, thinking like, oh, well, I'm the greatest business person in the world or whatever, and even though we're, in the beginning, it's hard to tell ourselves that, but then over time that becomes a soundtrack that we tell ourselves instead of negative ones. So I really like that one. That's been a good book that I've listened to quite a bit.
Yeah, I appreciate you telling me about that, because when I listened to it, I kind of switched up some of the affirmations that I do just to try it out differently. It said in there, don't say I am 175 pounds and 10% body fat. He said, every day I'm getting fitter and fitter. I was like, I really like that, because as long as I'm moving in that good direction, I might not ever get exactly where I want to be as far as like body weight and body fat and, all of that perfect. But I keep saying that that's perfect, but maybe that's not perfect. But if I'm getting fitter and healthier every single day, well, that's a very attainable goal. So I like that book. And he's funny. He's just a funny guy. You can tell that he's very passionate about what he does, and he's pretty open to the fact that, hey, I wasn't going to do this for a living. I just happened to be pretty good at it. And I was able to change those internal beliefs, and now I'm a author and a speaker, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, he has one. He started at nothing, right? And just said, that's something I've always wanted to do. I want to do that. So started kind of telling himself that he was a successful speaker. And he tells one story of how he went to an event. I don't even know what kind of an event, but he decided to, he was trying to build a following and a community and stuff. So he put out there that they were going to have like a side event, and he like rented a room and made a bunch of stickers and like flyers and stuff for this event that he had envisioned, of all these people coming to his event. But this was like early stages. He didn't have a very big community. So he planned this whole big thing, put it out there and everything. And like 2 people came. Like he'd printed off thousands of stickers to hand out and all this stuff. And, he talks about how he, it was a letdown, but he could have really let it get to him more than he did. And then like, so he just used it as a building block instead of a failure. Well, then like 5 years down the road or something like that, he actually was one of the like legit speakers at that event. And he's like the greatest moment of the event or whatever was when I walked off stage, and it was right next door to the room that I'd had my event in that flopped or whatever,
That's
something
really cool.
kind of like that. So it's cool to just see that, because I think we all feel that when we're starting a business or whatever. There's going to be failure, but using that to be a positive thing and move forward is pretty cool. So anyway, I like that one.
Yeah, I like that. This goes along with it. And this is very little, but if people look up Jocko Willink on YouTube, and it's his little speech about good. It's like 2.5 minutes long, but it's taking everything that could be negative and it's saying good. Like, I tripped today. Good. Well, why is that good? Because I learned to pick up my foot in that spot. Or, hey, I gained 5 pounds. Good. It's good because I know what made me gain that 5 pounds. I can change that. Hey, I messed up in business. I, spent $200 on advertising over here and it didn't do anything for me. Good. I learned to not spend $200 in advertising in that spot again. So it's a good little speech. Just people can look it up, play it, do some push-ups to it or something, but it's really good.
That's awesome.
So
yeah, that's cool. We never know. You never know if something's good or bad when it happens. You never do.
And we're such resilient people.
Interesting.
We're, people go through just nuts stuff, things that I've never had to go through. Whether that's a serious death in the family or divorce, tragedy, it's just stuff that I've never had to go through. People, they don't just go through it. They go through it and they thrive and they grow from it and they learn, and they're so much more resilient. We're so much more resilient than we think we are.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Cool.
So
sweet. Well,
right on.
We'll chat again next week. If anyone has any questions or anything, they can always reach out, and Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Cool.
We'll just be here doing our thing.
Sounds good. We'll see you soon.
See ya.